Now we continue with Rolf Adam of Cisco. Welcome to Ecosummit.
Thanks, Jan. And it's always a pleasure to be here and make a contribution to this great event. I'm going to talk to you today about public lighting, city lighting infrastructure, and fully sympathize with the notion that Stephen put out this morning. Infrastructure isn't cool. I mean, if you come back from a trip to London, Rome, Paris, whatever, the last thing that you're going to tell your friends about is, well, they have such a cool lighting system. You will be talking about the food, the Eiffel Tower, and all that. So I try to put some light on lighting infrastructure. Now, if we reflect on the last day and a half, the three recurrent themes have really been urbanization is going to continue as a trend and will accelerate. Infrastructure investments to cope with that urbanization trend will need to be massive, and in the end, we don't have the money to make the investment, at least on all the investments that will be needed. So what we need to do is think twice about spending money and spend the money wisely, specifically in areas like public lighting infrastructure that is more a burden than a business case today. And maybe I can shed some light on how that could be turned into a business case if we move along and spend the money wisely. Now, if we look at lighting infrastructure, the way that it's operated today, it brings light clearly, and we're starting to see with the move to LED-based infrastructure, we see the interest in creating ambience. So we are having a big project with the city of Amsterdam, for example, where we're creating an ambient lighting infrastructure that does not only provide light, but it changes the color of the light to create an ambience. Depending, let's say, the municipality may have a big festival, they want to have a colored lighting. There may be an emergency, you want to have lighting pointing people in the right direction where the accident is. Or you may want to guide tourists through the use of lighting infrastructure. So you can have a multi-purpose lighting infrastructure when it comes to lighting per se, but we don't do anything else. People want to have it well lit for security purposes. The one thing that's missing today in a lot of instances is being capable of managing the lighting infrastructure from an energy efficiency perspective. And that's missing today, and that's what a lot of companies are working on, turning the lighting infrastructure per se into an energy efficient infrastructure by dimming it and all those things. And that's really nothing new, because we can do this with a lot of things that are connected. The really interesting piece is, as we move to LED-based lighting, we're basically putting out there an infrastructure that is not only connected to one of the biggest systems that we have in any city, namely the electricity grid that it's connected to, but we are creating an infrastructure that is capable of speaking IP. And then we can think about other use cases. Now, the primary use case that we have is bringing down OpEx. If we look at the way that maintenance is done today for lighting infrastructure, that's archaic. If they want to see how many light bulbs are actually out, they turn on the light during the day and then they just go and have a look. And they walk the streets, drive the streets, and exchange the light bulbs that are not working. If we look at the infrastructure that we are operating, and Josef will talk a little bit more about this later on, our customers are running infrastructures that have hundreds of thousands or even millions of ports. So the little things where you put your patch cable in. And we can tell you exactly, or our customers can tell exactly, what is connected to that port and what is connected to the device that is connected to the device connected into the port. We have 100% transparency of that infrastructure that we are running because we can identify it. Now, as we move the lighting infrastructure from the existing incandescent lighting infrastructure to an IP-based LED lighting structure, we know exactly what's happening in that network. And we are better able to manage the network and bring down operations cost. Very interesting. Asset management, big driver for that. So we see utilities actually starting to look at CapEx and OpEx, balancing that. Is it worthwhile going to LED, or should we stick with the old infrastructure system that we have? So if you have an infrastructure that is actually capable of transporting more information than just power to power the light, what do you do with it? If you think about inner cities are facing a massive challenge because people are moving to the city, but they don't want to be in the inner city. Infrastructure there is poor. At the same time, service providers, the telecoms carriers, are facing the problem that as we have more and more people with high-end devices, the smartphones, the tablets, being used in a city, they face the challenge of actually the 3G, 4G, and then looking forward 5G, whatever G networks, not being capable of managing all the traffic that's coming across the system. So what they are interested in is how can we use some of the traffic, or how can we redirect some of the traffic away from a 3G, 4G network and onto, for example, a wireless infrastructure. So why not use public lighting infrastructure that needs to go digital anyway as a hub for a wireless network, and use that in the inner city space to create wireless browsing environments, or use that for small-scale cities, 20,000, 30,000 inhabitants, somewhere in the middle of nowhere where they have fiber optic connected to the city, but then how do you bring fiber optic to the individual household? Fiber to the curb, fiber to the home will never work in those smallish environments. Why not use a single hub and then provide a wireless infrastructure in that space? Electric vehicle charging. I never get tired of pointing out ubitricity and the work that Knut is doing in this space. The basic fear that people have is range anxiety. Now, what you can do is basically use 5,000, 10,000 euros to build a single charging station, or you can use the infrastructure that's already there, the public lighting infrastructure, to add that use case on top of it. So now you have 3 use cases already. You have the public lighting per se, because that's still going to be there. You have a wireless network that you can provide, and you have the EV charging. And the story continues. Parking meters, I mean, again, parking meters are archaic. You need those tiny little coins you put in the meter, you get something out of it, and then you put this in your car. I mean, you can do any sort of mobile application, mobile parking that you will run over your lighting infrastructure. If people feel the need to have something physical where they can swipe their mobile device. Sensing is an important use case. Last year, the Düsseldorf event, I think we had a Smart Planet there, and the CEO talk about how they put new sensors onto the city. And that's not only the sensors that we use for, say, misbehavior, the parking, metering, video surveillance, video CCTV. I mean, those use cases we are somewhat afraid of and hesitant that people will deploy that. But think about gas metering, metering the level of gas we have in the city, environmental metering, temperature metering, parking space detection, those type of meters. And the beauty is that you don't need to have this on each and every lamppost. You can use some of them and then selectively invest into the buildup of the infrastructure there. And again, the story continues. Many of you remember the movie where Steve Martin was hugging the billboard? Come on, I do. I'm the only one probably. Exactly, and don't have a television. But then the interesting piece is that you have a new way of communicating with people, because today JCDecaux and others put out the billboards, paper-based boards all over the city, and they're not networked, and you don't have any transparency if people are actually watching it, how they interact with it. Now you can actually change this, have digital media streaming there, make the content relevant to the person coming by. So if I live in the city and I walk by and the system recognizes I've been shopping for the past 3 hours, well, maybe I get a coupon from Starbucks pointing me in the direction of a Starbucks or any other shop for that sake. So there's much more interaction that can be brought into the inner city with the use of public lighting infrastructure. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of municipalities and the utilities operating the lighting system in that space aren't investing smartly. They only see the EU mandate to roll out a different lighting infrastructure that they have today, and they're happy if they just can roll out whatever is cheapest. And they don't see this as an opportunity to turn a negative business case into a positive one by adding value-added services on top of an existing infrastructure, which would be the easiest thing to do. So what we anticipate is that we will see new service provider coming to this space. Philips, for example, is investing a massive amount of money in building out the services capabilities. The carriers will try to take over some of that business because they understand that end customer business and the potential behind it that resides within the lighting infrastructure. And yeah, call to action. If you have a business case that you feel is relevant for this, if you see a project coming there, come talk to us and we are happy to support you in that project or even help you find the right project with the right municipality. I think it's a very interesting space, and with the investment having happening until 2017, if we don't act now, we miss the chance to actually turn our lighting infrastructure in something that is more than just another light. Thank you.
Do you have a question for Rolf?
Very interesting presentation. We actually looked into this segment for quite a while, and it's very difficult to identify who is the customer, because municipalities who are typically in charge for public lighting don't have the money to invest, and I think that the things you presented are extremely interesting. They are very fancy, but it probably takes 500, 600, 700 euros per lamp pole to bring them onto this level. So who do you see as the customer here?
Yeah, various stages. So in the end, the city always is the customer because they need to provide the basis for this. I think the business model will change. So we are working with financial services institutions in turning this into a pay-as-you-go type of model where the city doesn't need to invest. And that's probably the big game changer that we bring the technology, the use case, the content, and the financing to the city.
Thank you very much, Rolf.
Thanks, Jan.
Here's your speaker gift.
Thank you.